What are my skill set? I would tell you 95% of the people we work with are technically sound. They know what they're doing when it comes to the hard skills. It is the collaboration. It's not needing to be right all the time. It's not needing to be loved by everyone. It's all these other kinds of things. You find a high potential person that people go, wow, you're going to end up in the C-suite. And you don't every single time. It's because you relied too heavily on your technical capabilities and you did not build relationships
That
up,
makes
down
sense.
across the organization. So you have to spend time, and you can do it remote, but you have to spend time cultivating relationships, connecting with people, and expanding internally as well as externally to your company.
Most people think their career is going to move forward because they're good at what they do. They focus on getting better technically, learning more, becoming the expert. But here's where that's wrong. That's actually not what really moves people forward. And in fact, it's often the thing that holds them back. In this episode of the WaveMakers, we're joined by Dr. Mickey Parsons, the founder of the Workplace Coach. He's a master certified coach, which places him in the top 2% of coaches globally. He has, for the last 20 years, coached over 3,000 executives. And this is what he consistently sees. Most people are technically sound, but it's the non-technical skills, how they communicate, how they build trust, how they lead, that determine whether they actually move forward. And this isn't just about executives. This applies to you whether you're a contractor running your own business, an individual contributor trying to grow, or you're already leading a team. Because leadership doesn't start when you get the title. It shows up long before that. And if you miss it, that's where your career can stall. We are so excited to have Mickey Parsons with the Workplace Coach here with us today. Mickey is actually someone that I've known probably, Mickey, what are we, 20-ish years?
Let's just go with 20.
Okay, 20 years. He owns a business that does all kinds of coaching and specializes in leadership coaching. Back when I first met Mickey, he was starting his business. I was starting Corner Office, and it's just been a pleasure brainstorming with him and getting advice from him and all kinds of things. And so we asked him to come on today because leadership is not just about executives. Leadership hits our entire audience. It's contractors, it's leads, it's individual contributors, new managers, and executives.
Yeah.
So today we're going to break down kind of all those sections. And Mickey, we're so glad that you're here with us.
Thank you, Carla. I'm thrilled to be here.
Mickey.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks for being here. Well, and I was just going to say, as Carla mentioned, many years of leadership coaching. We won't say the actual number, but what keeps you so
She already
passionate?
did.
How do you keep that passion going after so many years in the industry? What keeps you passionate about helping others and coaching others?
Yeah, it's funny. I started coaching, or I'm actually managing a team when I was about 22 years old. So it's been a minute and a half. And, they were so much older than I was, 31 to mid 60s, maybe something like that. And it was literally what we would call trial by fire. Right. And so I probably better than I know today, I knew how to kind of keep my mouth closed back then, watch, mimic behavior, things like that. And so, I loved it. And I'd always been kind of a psychology guy. So, I did the EAP, employee assistance stuff, but I loved management. I loved business development. And eventually when I kind of discovered this thing called coaching, I was like, hooray, this is kind of how I bring it all together. And it's one of those things, I've never had the same day twice in over 25 years. I get to work with some of the most amazing people on the planet. And I also think that it keeps me wanting to learn and grow and be at my best. And I just think it's so much fun. Something that hit me very early on is I would work with someone, maybe a high potential person, right? Or maybe an individual contributor. Over time, they'd move up the ladder and up the ladder and up the ladder. And I've literally had folks get to that point that I've been able to impact their lives. And now 30, 40,000 people reporting up to them. That is so exciting. And bit of a huge responsibility as well, right? So
Right.
I think it's just that just never having the same day twice and being able to connect with the high quality caliber of people that I get to hang out with, like you two.
Fantastic. Very relatable with in the recruiting field as well. When you put
Absolutely.
somebody in maybe at an analyst role, and a couple years later, they're now senior manager or director leading their own team, and that growth, and you were part of that. It's just, it's feels good.
Yeah.
So I understand where you're coming from.
Literally pictures of people were going through my mind as Mickey was
Yeah.
saying
Yeah,
that, over the years.
absolutely.
Yes.
It's amazing, right?
Well, and I was going to, you mentioned obviously independent contractors, you owning, they're business owners. I mean, it's their company, and they're representing, it's their organization. And a lot of times when we work with contractors, they're coming in, they're an expert in that area, right? But they don't necessarily have that authority. So, what's maybe some advice for those folks going in to kind of build that trust with executives or those leaders, maybe in a faster way? What could
Yeah.
you recommend?
I think that so much of that comes down to, what we're kind of calling EQ, emotional intelligence now, right? And how we team, how we partner. Do I know how I say what I say, how that impacts you positively or negatively? So, I think I always say start out with as much clarity as you can have, communicate as much as you possibly can. Sometimes we have to coach up a little bit with those that we're working with. But I think people want to see us as um, just a trusted contributor and not a competitor in any sense of that word or that phrase. I think it's when they see us as someone who we're going to make their lives better by the expertise and know-how that we bring. And I think that's kind of where the magic happens is when we have that. They begin to almost sort of forgetting that we're that IC, that we're the hired gun, that we're coming in temporarily, right? I want people to think about Mickey Parsons and the workplace coach being a partner for decades to come, not just to fix one executive. So
Right.
I think that attitude can carry through almost everything we do.
That's good. One of the things I'm just kind of thinking right now, and I saw someone kind of post this recently, where a lot of times, companies are hiring Workday professionals to come in, and maybe they already have in their mind what they want the solution to be, and they're having these people come in, and maybe it's, maybe to answer just as a yes, like, okay, yeah, what you say, what you're, picturing is valid. Instead of,
Absolutely.
but there are better ways. If there's a difficult situation like that, or maybe even a difficult executive, what would be your advice on, or difficult anything? What would be your advice for a contractor in dealing with that kind of situation?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of variables there. At its core, there are some things I might consider where I, as the business owner, the IC, the professional, am I the right one to deliver a certain message even? It might be that. I mean, because if I may have a bit of a target on my back or forehead because they're looking for a solution already. They think they have the solution, right? They're not open to any of that. So it might be that we pull in some other executives who have different perspectives and we let them have a little of that group think happen. And that might maneuver that executive in a different direction, maybe. I also think it's be as warm and professional as we can, as we were talking earlier. I think it's absolutely that partnership. Let them know that my role is to make you look good, right? I'm here to partner with you, collaborate with you, and help you absolutely be at your best and achieve your best. I was talking with a business owner recently, and she was saying, I walked into a company that we would all know, and she said, within about 45 days, they had identified a massive, massive process change, micro process change that would save tons of money. And they're sitting on it. They will not do it.
Gosh.
And until certain people retire.
Wow.
Yep. That
Right. So
happens.
sometimes we are blocked. Sometimes there are blockages that we can't overcome. But a lot of times I find that when they see us as that trusted member of the team, we'll bend a little bit.
That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Well, Nikki, you kind of said this earlier. These are people, independent contractors, for the most part in the Workday ecosystem. They're business owners.
Mhm.
Mickey, you're a business owner. We're business owners.
Mhm.
What do you think was one of the biggest things that impacted you when you created the workplace coach?
Mm. Yeah, it was, I went through so many things that early on. It was a scattergun approach, brutally. And some of those were just ridiculous, right? I think, honestly, what really helped me the most was getting serious. I'd get up and be like, okay, what's the best coach in the world doing today? Get busy, right? And I really formed a support team. I formed a support team personally and professionally. I've had one amazing, consistent coach for about 30 years, and she's a rock star and knows when to kick my butt and support and love on me, and that has been the magic in so many ways. But people get it, and they know my priorities, and that creating the support team has probably been number one. I think always we need to stay curious. We need to keep learning all those kinds of things, but we're not islands. We're social people, and I certainly can't do this alone. So that was, I think, the magic is when I finally decided I was going to invest in myself, things started to change.
Absolutely. Got to invest in
Nice.
yourself.
So the coach got a coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
I just realized I'm with two coaches right here. Wait, I'm kind of left out.
Just for fun, I actually had a friend who owned an MRI back in the day, Management Recruiters International, and I spent about 45 days going through MRI University when I was teeing up to do some career coaching. So I know about
No way. I didn't realize
as
that.
much about your industry.
And you live to
That's
tell
funny.
about it too. So
45 days. Woohoo!
Spin of the dial, 60 calls a day. Oh my gosh, it was a
that's
killer.
actually about the average life of a high volume recruiter.
That was better
Yeah.
tenure than I realized then, right?
That would be like when you're calling from a phone book.
Pretty much.
Goodness.
The qualified list over the Yellow Pages. Well, there are people probably listening to this who don't know what Yellow Pages are, though, by the way.
I'm sure.
I guess we were talking about managers or about to talk about folks that have been maybe on a team. They're strong in their area, their module. And because of that, they're promoted to becoming a manager, but now they are managing people for the first time and strategy. And it's a whole different ballgame. But what's some advice that you might have as they move into kind of that new management leadership role, really for the first time?
I just feel like that people don't realize that a great widget maker cannot always manage a team of widget makers. And first of all, to me, the first thing that pops up is we have to realize it's not just the title and hopefully the pay grade that changed, but it is our entire scorecard. I am known for my efficiencies. I am known for the quality of work I do. I'm known for all these great things as an individual contributor, a solo entrepreneur, et cetera. When I begin managing people, I then am known by how I get results through others. And that is so radically different. Nobody really cares what I'm producing today. They
Right.
care about what my team is doing, how they're behaving, what's the culture I'm creating, how am I developing these people, supporting these people, and then creating a legacy through succession, pipeline planning, and all those things. So it is absolutely radical, the shift in mindset. So I think that's kind of get on board. Be my advice. If you don't like change, if you don't like, and it's constantly changing, as we all know, if you're not open to that and managing challenging, complex situations and personalities, stay an individual contributor and give yourself a break. It's an interesting thing. I think I work with a lot of people, a lot of leaders, and most of ours are VP and C-suite or high potential in that direction. Maybe 10 or 12 years in, and they're just kind of like, I'm done. I'm going back to being an IC, right?
Sure.
Because it's like, I just want to be accountable for myself. I think just being really, really, assess yourself, right? Number one, and make sure that you are up for radical change often.
That's good.
Well, Mickey, you say assess yourself. So, my company just decided that they're going to promote me into a role. So what do I look at? What do I, outside of, excitement, panic, all these things that you
Absolutely.
have. What do I do? What are the things that I need to look at in my characteristics or my skills going, okay, I'm going to be okay, or I need to probably work on some of these things What do I look at? What are the five? I don't,
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think so as us looking self-reflecting, right, into what I need to do. I mean, I think there are a lot of options. Number one, I just think we need to kind of understand ourselves, understand the motivation for saying yes, I want to move up the ladder. I know so many um professions even, I'm going to lean into healthcare a little bit, but I know so many physician leaders, nurse leaders, et cetera, who feel like nobody else is going to do, oh, I've been here a long time. I've got to become the director of nursing. Oh, I've got to be over radiology. And they really don't want to be. They're committed to healthcare and healing, and they have to do this other management stuff. And it's almost like it's kind of proverbial monkey on their back the whole time they're doing it. And so I'd say, no, don't do that. You're going to be miserable every day. You have to do that management stuff and put that hat on, right? So assess kind of, why am I doing this? Do I have a clear understanding? Definitely, what are my skill set? I would tell you 95% of the people we work with are technically sound. They know what they're doing when it comes to the hard skills. It is the collaboration. It's not needing to be right all the time. It's not needing to be loved by everyone. It's all these other kinds of things. So I would say do a couple of, depending on what you've got access to, do a couple of personality tests on yourself. Look at your old engagement scores and see kind of where you fell there. Do you love people? Do you love teaming? Do you love the challenge of, sometimes selling a great idea and letting someone else think it's theirs? Actually, all the time, right? We have to do it all the time. But yeah, I think there's so many awesome mirrors to look into. At its core, ask 5 people that know you. What am I great at?
Well,
What am I great at? And what are my blind spots? And if they know and love you and you can tell them to be 100% honest, they'll tell you the truth, right? And you will absolutely see some common themes. I can guarantee you they'll do probably just as good as the Clifton Strengths or the BIA because they know you and see you and watch you. And you're going to walk away with 2 or 3 things to work on. You have to, if we hook in to loving being a lifelong learner, if we hook into loving the change and evolution. I mean, I look back 25 years ago and I thought I was a pretty damn great coach, but I look back and I feel sorry for those people. I'm so much better today.
Be careful, Mickey. They
I
may be
know.
watching
I
and
know.
they may want their money back or
I've
times
literally
however
thought,
many
like,
years.
should I give them their money back? Should I call them up and offer them a free month of coaching? I don't
That's funny.
know. I'm not going to do that.
Oh, that's
That's a
funny.
good way to reactivate your database.
Well, and I was going to piggyback off that, Mickey, is that's not just someone who's moved into management, but it sounds like kind of reassessing that, as they keep going, or maybe if they're feeling a roadblock is continue to ask those questions to colleagues or mentors so that they can improve, or maybe something that they thought they were fantastic in 5 years later, maybe that is the area that they now need to improve in. So it's not just from what I'm hearing is a one and done, but you constantly ask those questions throughout your career progression.
Absolutely. It's an interesting thing. I hadn't even thought about it, Becky, until you said that, but every single year, I'll get a handful of CEOs and they call and they'll be like, Mickey, I made it to the top spot. Now, some CEOs don't want coaching because they don't want to look at themselves in a mirror. But those who do will realize, like, I made it because of a certain skill set that I have, right? And that catapulted me for one reason or another to the top. But very often, there'll be 2 or 3 or 4 a year that say, I never learned to be a great people manager. I never learned to inspire a team. I never even understood what it meant to be visionary. Can we work on that? I mean, even in the very top spots, to look at yourself and say, I want to be better. That's the stuff that helps build a legacy in the long run.
Nice. It's a good
that's
segue
good.
to move into that next area,
Let's
which
do
is
it.
more.
Wait. I'm still a new manager.
Carla, I apologize. I'm all excited.
Slow down,
Good
Mickey.
energy. Sorry.
I kind of have a 2-part on this, Mickey. So a company promotes someone. Now, people that were your peers, you're now their manager. How do you approach that?
Yeah.
Good point. That was a good one.
The data says that most people get there when you've been friends, you've been colleagues, you've hung out at the pool with each other, whatever that happens to be. I would acknowledge the potential awkwardness. I would acknowledge my intent to be the best possible leader, whatever I'm going to be. And I'd try to hear them out, in advance of stepping into that role, if at all possible, when you're still ears, if that's possible. If it doesn't, if it can't happen, then you can still kind of have that conversation. But I feel like we can't be, the tendency is, and for a minute, I managed my best friend at a job, and I was so tough on him. I was an absolute jerk because I knew people knew we were friends and I couldn't let him away with anything, right? He had to be the best. Wow. So we can't do that. We can't also be so casual that we just let them away with things either. So it's finding the balance. And I think it's doing some check-ins. It's asking that support team to keep their tentacles out for a while. If you see or hear anything, if I'm doing something wrong, give me a little feedback, give me a little signal. And I think people do it. I think the intent has shifted. Don't be the jerk that I was originally, because that never pays off.
Are you still friends?
Not as much as we once were.
Okay, there you go. Lesson learned. What not to do.
We're being honest.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right. Well, my last question for the newer managers, again, because this happens. It's again what people think are natural progressions. Everybody still kind of thinks the moving up the career ladder type deal. All right. My company has not invested in, didn't have the workplace coach come in and help us build a succession plan. I've thrown somebody into a role. I find myself in this role. My company's still not hiring the workplace coach to come in and help me manage. So what do I do? Where can I turn? What are some resources that I can find out there outside of ChatGPT?
It is one of those things where I feel like there are definitely great tools, resources out there, but it all has to begin with a real conversation. And it has to start with setting or clarifying expectations and trying to, like with any conflict management, we need to come sit on the same side of the table because we are in this together and we need to work through it and find a solution together. If we're going to be adversarial, it's never going to work out. So someone has to be honest and brave and say, this is tough, but this is also not working. Here's what I'm observing, specific about behaviors, right? What would you say to this? How can we move forward with some change? So on and so forth. So a little bit of that internal. And so it's that process of really identifying the situation, the opportunity, and getting real about it. I mean, there's other, EAP, depending on what you find out, HR can come in and provide some amazing resources. I've seen a lot of teams come in and do some learning together. And that has sparked a lot of innovation, which is critical to all of our success.
I mean, obviously there's a theme that's going through everything you're saying. It's communication. And really even, I know I've been fortunate enough to have this when I was new leaders and things like that, is just to go to your, promoted you and say, here is what I'm concerned about. Can you coach me through that? Can you help me through this? And it really kind of set some kind of plan or accountability program or something, but it's okay to just have that conversation and not assume that you have to all of a sudden, just because you got MGR at the end of your name that, or your title that, or beginning, that you have to assume that.
That's right. I agree completely. So many good managers are amazing mentors. And there are some that don't want to get too involved. They might give you resources instead of kind of being there, or they don't feel they have that capability to develop you beyond a certain parameter, maybe. But most of the better managers, the better leaders will hear, right? And they will support you in trying to find what you need to continue that growth process. And same, I've had some amazing managers. And I mean, I remember when companies would do 6 months of management training before you ever met an employee. You're good to get 6 hours in HR signing your papers nowadays. And it is truly trial by fire. You are learning on stage with all eyes on you. A little bit intimidating for most.
Yeah. Mickey, we're in the Workday ecosystem. We have no paper. No paper in the Workday ecosystem.
Everything's cloud.
Well,
all right, Nikki, let's go executives.
Yeah, well, and Mickey, I was going to ask, and it does go into the executives, and maybe it's 50-50. I don't know. You're the pro, but for those that are able to have the executive coaching once they get to that level and they are actively involved with that decision. Do you find that there's a higher percentage for those that there's something wrong, so I need to get coaching? There's something wrong maybe with myself, or is it more of, wow, I want coaching. I'm ready to turn the page and get more strategic or take things to the next level. When they seek you out, or these
Yeah.
executives, what is it that's drawing them to leadership coaching?
It's interesting. I mean, the International Coaching Federation would say, coaching is not for this type of behavior change. It's not when you call up and say, I'm about to terminate Carla if she doesn't do XYZ in 90 days, right? And yet that's a lot of the calls we get. Right.
Mm.
That is a lot of the calls we get. We have the high potentials that we think, maybe they're managing for the first time. They're a team lead, for example, they're entry level manager, young director or something like that. And so that was like, wow, we're so impressed. We want you to develop them, cultivate them, and then we'll watch. We'll see how they respond. But most calls, honestly, are either with an HR decision maker or a senior executive calling me and debriefing a little bit about what's going on. And then we begin to kind of co-create a plan and go from there. Was it Gallup says basically 50% of our managers are doing a great job, working hard to be great people leaders, right? The other 50%, not so much. Those aren't great odds. What's up with the other 50%? Well, maybe they're hiding behind those who are really amazing. Maybe they're controlling, and they're the curtain that everyone else is hiding behind. There's so many factors that it can destroy morale, momentum
Gosh, yeah.
very quickly, and people leave. Your A
Gosh.
players, as we know, as recruiters, my God, they won't stay in that environment. So that is one of the bigger issues when, we hear about.
Really is, though. You're right. I mean, countless conversations. I love my organization. I love my team. I'm leaving because I cannot deal with my manager, my director, my whatever. My last job,
Yeah.
I left because the CIO was so toxic.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm putting it out there.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why I left.
I've been there too. Absolutely.
And it drove me to start a recruiting company out of all things. But no, so people, they do leave. It's not just a saying. It really happens. They leave because of bad management.
It just creates toxicity. I think, you can't check it at the door, especially when work is such a massive part of our days. By the time we are engaged in work for what, 8, 10 hours sometimes, maybe commutes, and then you sleep 6, 7, 8 hours. What's left? If you're miserable at work, you're miserable, I think.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, and there's also the managers of the managers of the managers that need to sometimes, have that mirror turned to
True.
them. And we talk to people all the time. It comes a revolving door. They're on their third,
Absolutely.
fourth, fifth C level, and it's like something's not clicking. We're missing something, and often it does trickle down. But it's like you sometimes need to look way up.
Mickey, you've mentioned this now a couple times. High potentials.
Yes.
What defines? Give me just quick characteristics.
Yeah.
What is a high
Quick.
potential?
That's a challenge for me, Carla. It's a can-do attitude. It is ownership from day one. It is somebody that doesn't have a title, but you think they do because of the way they show up. They're prepared for
Nice.
meetings. They act like a senior director and they're not even leading a team yet. It's that type of person that people go, what in the world? Nikki's going to be our CEO someday. Sometimes it's that sixth sense, but it is more than that. It is how they show up, I think, in their world, and there's consistency.
And Carla, I'm going to also merit with something on that is those that are high performers, is there something that they can do and they're looking at, I want to be that C level. I want to be that VP. Are there behaviors that they can do? I mean, a lot of it is natural, right? But are there certain behaviors or practices that they can do to, get to that level, maybe even faster or more confidently if that's on the horizon?
Depending on where they are, I'd say make sure the skills are intact because that's going to serve them, whatever they're an expert at, finance, marketing, tech, et cetera. Make sure they truly are growing as ahead of the curve as they can possibly be, because they'll be recognized for that. Stay on top of it, love what you do, or find something else. I think, and going back to that communication thing, one thing that we know, there's been research after research, decade after decade, and it's one of those things that where they say if you find a high potential person that people go, wow, you're going to end up in the C-suite, and you don't every single time, it's because you relied too heavily on your technical capabilities and you did not build relationships
Makes
up, down, and
sense.
across the organization. So you have to spend time, and you can do it remote. So you have to spend time cultivating relationships, connecting with people, and expanding internally as well as externally to your company. So I think that would be the one thing I would say, and put it on your calendar. Write down the dozen people you need to know that can open doors and support you and help you develop, right? Hire a coach, have an internal mentor, official or not. A lot of companies don't have official, mentor, mentee kinds of programs. Guess what? AI can create a plan for you in 2 seconds, and go ask someone that you admire to help you execute.
That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
it's simple in
It's a really
today's
good
world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mickey, with and you again, you work with senior executives. What tends to be the most common issues that they're dealing with when they start working with you? Maybe just a couple, and how to resolve those.
It sort of depends on, I'm working with a couple folks now that are VPs heading to C-suite, right? And that's kind of a different thing, right? Is again, help them be at their best, understand everything, put them on a development path that's gonna serve them and the company well. Folks who are struggling, a lot of times it's something like they're holding too tightly. They're trying to do too much too quickly. They're new, either promoted a job or just took a new role in a new company, and so they've got a lot to prove. So they're trying to go at the speed of light, and they're missing the mark. And that could be in different reasons. It could be that they're pushing too hard. There's great resistance. It also could be where they're kind of getting to that point where they're not collaborating, coaching, delegating, et cetera. And so they're over promising and under delivering. So that's a lot of it, is they're sort of saying one thing and doing another. They've gotten into this web, this cycle. And I would say that people want insight and objectives from themselves and their leaders or stakeholders within a company, to be validated by data these days. So
Sure.
we're using a lot of that. So we're doing, some either conversational or 360 feedbacks. We're doing a lot of EQ leadership types of assessments, things of that nature. And when you run a couple of those and you have data from HR, the CEO, maybe a self score or something, those themes are irrefutable. And that does also make people kind of more willing to take a look at themselves, because this is not just a problem right here where I'm sitting today. It's probably going to be everywhere I go now. Because again, the world is changing and there's an expectation.
All right. You know what? I'm a brand new manager. I'm burnt out. Mickey, I'm sure in the time that you've had your business, you've been burnt out. What is it that has got you reconnected to keep you going forward?
Yeah, I think it depends on, I'm so blessed with resources, right? Great friends, my coaches. I get to reinvent myself. If I have a wild idea, I want to try something, I'll try, right? In the business or personally. The interesting thing too, I think it's an old model. It's called the S curve. And so if you take an S and sort of turn it on its side, right? You sort of look at it in your current role. And I'm new in my role. I'm a new recruiter, right? I'm a new coach. And so as I go up to the side of that S, I'm learning my craft. I'm mastering my trade. I'm building my network. I'm doing all these really cool things and I'm loving it. My productivity soars, my engagement soars. Man, I'm at the top. But when you get to that top, and that is different for all of us, right? It might
Right.
be 5 years for me. It might be 8 for you. Something around between that usually is what I observe, is between 5 and 8 years, I get to that pinnacle. And if there's not some re-engagement of some sort, new learning, a new, menu item, whatever it happens to be, right? Volunteer on a board, do something interesting, then that begins to go back down. The
That's
engagement,
it.
productivity
Yep.
slips. And so I
Yep.
think for ourselves and for our folks, we have to begin having those conversations early. Where are you going next? What's next? And it doesn't have to be. I've got a client, a senior VP in Orlando, Florida. He was telling me that he just had someone that works for him, and they're like, I want to learn Spanish. That's my thing. I want to learn Spanish because I know that's more important in our business every day. And then they came up and they're like, well, why don't we all learn Spanish? This entire company, they're going to pay for someone to come in and teach Spanish if you want to learn it, right? How cool is that? So that's kind of that, at least that one person, that's her thing. She wants to do that. She knows it's going to be interesting, fun, maybe more profitable. I think we have to be aware of those cycles. I find myself, kind of not as engaged in a coaching conversation, or I'm kind of in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm diagnosing. I know exactly what this is. And here's the treatment plan, or here's what we're doing. I'm like, oh, time to look at yourself. Something's up because I'm not engaged.
Interesting.
What's up? You know?
Mm.
And I have to look at that, and I have to look at it fast. I've kind of lost my mind there for a minute and figure out a way to get back to it. But I think we all have to do that. We need stability, and we need variety at the same time. And so we have to find that way to tap into it.
I love that the whole S curve
Yeah.
concept. I'd not thought about that, but I know in our compensation market guide that
Mm.
we've been publishing for years now, we would look at the tenure of someone at a company compared to when they are starting to look, and it always hits that 5-year mark. And
Interesting.
it's different by different age groups, but the kind of the biggest age group that's kind of in the population right now,
Mm.
it was always around that 5-6 year mark. So Workday managers, look at your team, and if
Yep.
you've got people there, you need to teach them Spanish or whatever they want to do, but
Absolutely.
engage them,
Yes.
and that helps with retention, team retention, things
Figure
like
it
that.
out. And every single quarter, that's on every leader's scorecard. They don't do annual reviews anymore. But that's their scorecard. Is have you had a coaching conversation with every person that reports to you about their career path?
Wow. Nice.
And I've heard from some of those people that's too much. Yeah, like I'll let you know, but no, but they know it's open. They know that is one of their values. Your manager is there to help develop you and prepare you for the next level.
Good.
Boom.
Well, I think it's that time. I know we could just keep going on and on and on, but it is for the barrel rush. Da-da-da-da. And Mickey, what that means is basically these are, like in the barrel of a wave. You got to get in, get out. So these are just quick questions that we're throwing at you. Whatever comes to the top of mind. But I think I'm leading and I have to look at my question because I
Sure.
don't have it
Okay.
memorized. So,
That's
all
good.
right. This one's pretty good. What is one trait that describes or how you would describe a great leader?
Stability.
Ooh, that's
Yeah,
good.
that's a good one.
There's so many, right? I mean, I think there's so many great characteristics of awesome leaders, but I think at the end of the day, we have to be able to be stable enough that sometimes we have to carry the company's agenda, and the vision forward, and we have to sell it to everybody else, and we can't do that haphazardly. So I think stability is very important.
Oh, that's good. I mean, honestly, that hits on trust that you were talking about earlier as well. And again, it's whether you're independent or not, it's trust. Trust is huge right now.
Huge.
Okay. One piece of leadership advice that's out there that you absolutely think is wrong.
Leadership advice. A couple things pop into mind. I'm not sure if this answers your question, but one is, the old adage that leaders are born, not made. I'd be out of business if that were true. I can make a great leader. So there are people that have some of those just savviness, right? And those great people skills. Doesn't necessarily make them awesome in the boardroom and leading, an organization. However, I think the other thing is, and these are the high potentials. These are younger, usually first-time managers, team leads. They kind of step into this role or fear stepping into these roles because they feel like they have to know it all.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely not. So yeah, I think that kind of comes up for me. And we all know once you've been doing it for like 2 days, you realize you will never know it all. Right. But there's a lot of anxiety and fear coming from that. And it's just part of the process is understanding the reality of the situation.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. All right. when you look at, because again, you've coached all these people all these years. When you look at ones that just have had great careers, and looking back, what's the one thing they got right?
You know, I think they believed in themselves enough to kind of do those investments, tweak their skills, do those kinds of things. But I also think they kind of believed in people and what they do, what they're doing in the world. They are so passionate about it and so I think finding that thing that you are passionate about can really, really help. I coach CEOs who could care less about, what it is they're doing. They just know they're good at leading an organization. That's fine too. Very often those are the ones that retire and are less worried about, the legacy maybe.
So I'm up next. It is, I guess, what's the biggest habit that you've done for yourself that has impacted your career and the longevity of your career? That's something that you truly practice what you preach.
Yeah. Support team. Got to have that. The other thing I would say that I think applies to most people and we never have time for, I all but insist that everybody that works with me as their coach, that they put on their calendar 1/2 day a month, and that is for strategic visioning, planning, action, and self-development. Now, they probably need more than that, but if they spend that 3 or 4 hours working on it, they can then plan forward. I think it's absolutely important as individual contributors, as business owners, as leaders, as executives, we are driving this bus and we have to understand what needs to happen. Is it time for the fuel pump to be changed, or do we need some oil? What is it? And we can't be visionary and tactical at the same time, and
Yeah.
so we have to work on the business. We have to pull back. We have to think about what skills do I need to lead in this new era? What are the best minds saying about this? Not necessarily the gloom and doom, but it's okay to look at that too and find your balance. But I literally think you've got to take a 1/2 day a month and figure it out. I truly feel like we need that time. I love it when I'm walking on the beach, but sometimes I need my technology, to write things down.
Gotcha.
And I mean, even that little bit of time that you talk about sounds so easy. It's harder than you think to commit to that.
Absolutely, Carla. I will tell you, almost everybody I challenge in that direction is like, they're in 2 weeks later and they're like, please help me put together an agenda. Because I just stare at my, phone or my computer or whatever. And I'm like, or they'll get into it and they'll do something, but then they're lost for the next 3 months or whatever. And so you do have to be purposeful. You do have to figure out your vibe, your rhythm, your whatever.
All right, we're going to finish this with the go-to question, my favorite question. All right, Mickey, what is your one song to get you pumped up, motivated, if you're just having not the best day that you have to play in here?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. And, I just tell Alexa to play Queen music, and almost every time, Don't Stop Me Now comes on first.
It's a good one.
I love that song. You cannot sit still. Even I have to get up and dance and move a little bit, which is, nobody wants to see that, believe me. And as a theme, right? I mean, don't stop.
Stop me now.
That's actually really,
That's a really
there's
good one.
great opportunity, live life, love your work, all those kinds of things just make who and what we are so much better. So yeah, I think that's my favorite song right now.
It's a good
that's
one.
good.
An oldie, but
That's
a good one,
one.
right?
Yeah, I love it. Well, you made it. You made it through the barrel rush. So hope
All
you
right.
enjoyed that. So
That was scary.
you did really well.
Thanks for
Well,
taking care of me.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that I will tell everyone I have been working on Mickey for months to do this. we finally grabbed him, but thank you so much. It's just been so nice to see what you've built and accomplished with the Workplace Coach. And I personally just love our brainstorm sessions and advice that you've given and the friendship that we've had all these years.
Absolutely.
So thank you for coming and sharing this with our industry, and looking forward to more collaborations. And again, really appreciate it.
Awesome. It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you both.
Well, and
Take care.
also just want to say, of course, all the links, we will have that, to Mickey and to Workplace Coach. But real quickly, Mickey, if somebody wants to get in touch with you,
Yeah.
what would be the best way for them to reach out?
Email me, I guess. Mickey, Mickey, at theworkplacecoach.com. You can also call 770-451-0505. Love to chat with you. It's a phenomenal team, to be quite honest. And, we do a lot of corporate work with larger organizations, but we always have, 4 or 5 IC professionals who are micro business owners. And it's so much fun to watch them grow. And I've got a technology group recently sold, and the guy started it 9 years ago, and he was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And in 10 years, I want to sell this company for 3.5 million. He sold it for 3.1. So he kind of missed it a little bit, but
Underachiever.
what fun. And I got to work with him.
That's
Well, we worked
amazing.
really intensely together for about 2 years, and then it was quarterly. That's magic, right? To be able to see people's dreams come true.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Well, that's a good
awesome.
tagline for you. If there's your marketing, right?
I know.
See, you work with Dr. Parsons, and who knows what it could get you. Thank you so much, Mickey, and pleasure.
Thank you both.
And
This was fun.
Fantastic.
I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. If there's one thing to take from this conversation, leadership isn't something you wait for. It's something you're already demonstrating every day in every role. The question is, are you building it or avoiding it? If this episode made you rethink that, share it with someone who's in that transition right now. And for more conversations around real insights, real careers, real stories, follow WaveMakers and check out WD Beacon, where we're helping Workday professionals grow beyond just their next role.